All right, we are back with HOKA athlete, back-to-back podium finisher here, Eszter Csillag. Eszter, welcome back. Your third Western States.
Thank you. Nice to be back.
So a single podium finish here is a career highlight. 2 in a row is absolutely incredible. I'd love to just start by asking you to compare and contrast the 2 days. In what way were they similar and different?
The position was the same. So both time I arrived third. The races were quite different. I mean, the course was the same, but in 2023, it was a snow year. So till Robinson Flat, we were running together, looking for the flags. And I was, I started quite easy. And the race for me started after Robinson Flat. And it was like a dream come true because it was my first race in the States and it was like my first year with HOKA, and before me it was Courtney and Katie, and it was like, oh wow, it's amazing this is happening. Like I made it. Like I was almost like not capable to believe that it happened, you know. So it was really nice. And last year, but also it was a cooler year, so we have to add that. Although like I was still doing all the, you know, the heat protocol before the race or the cooling protocols during the race, but still it was a cooler year. And last year, so it's 2024, I raced differently. I started earlier to pull away from the group with whom we started. And after Robinson Flat, I started to push more as much as I could, and then the heat and probably me trying to avoid too much water on my head, like I had to pay the bill for that. So basically, by the time I arrived to Michigan Bluff, I was quite blown up, and that I had to carry on till Rakitchaki when I finally could go into the cold river and water and cool down my brain, and then I could run again. So I have that 40 kilometer, which was not good, but still I arrived third. And my time was better than the first year. So it's, you know, it's confusing. It's confusing.
How do you interpret that? Yeah,
it's confusing, but it's, you know, in that sense, it's good to be back because I know on what I need to work on, or I had to work on before coming here. So it's a good thing.
It's really interesting. So you were 30 minutes faster last year, but it seems to me that you're saying that maybe the execution wasn't quite as good as 2023. Maybe you could share where you think there's most room for improvement. Because, I mean, frankly, also, we should tell our audience, you had a 40K rough spot in 2024, and you're the 4th fastest woman ever in Western States history. Those two things are not necessarily intuitive. Usually when you have a 40K low spot, you're not also running, you know, a historically fast time. Where do you see the biggest room for improvement for yourself?
That 40 kilometer.
So from Michigan Bluff to Rakitchaki? I mean,
like practically speaking, definitely that 40 kilometer is where I want to improve. But in the whole dynamic, certainly the cooling strategy, because last year it was a warmer year, so you had to really keep yourself cooling down to keep running at your best. And it was not happening because I was not cooling myself enough. And so definitely that is something that I like when we were building up my training block, and actually from the beginning of the year, like it was all considered. And so that is something that I had to build into my preparation. And on the other hand, like with the crew, there are some changes that we will make. So it's on everyone's side, small changes, but hopefully they add up. And then there is no perfect race, but there is space for improvement.
Sure. All right. So talking about this year now, it seems that you've only raced once, the Buffalo Stampede in Australia. Is that right?
Yeah.
And it was a very solid race, but tell us about sort of the strategy of building your season towards Western States this year, because it seems like you've intentionally maybe raced less in order to peak at the right time. Is that a fair interpretation?
This year, my preparation was different. Like in the past 2 years, I ran a marathon before coming here, and now it was a 100-kilometer trail race. So I wouldn't say I raced less, because I didn't race before, even in the 2 years before necessary that much, or if I did, it was a road race. So it's not like it doesn't count as a trail race.
Yeah.
So it was a change, and I think it was good when you do something at the third time and you have something that you know already, but on the other hand, you are still like making some changes and figuring out. And Buffalo Stampede and my stay in Australia, which was a longer stay, so I actually treated it as almost like a training camp, functioned like as a build-up for Western States. And yeah, I had a good race. I mean, the whole race was great, and there were some sections which can translate into Western States. So yeah, I that's how I prepared myself for Western States. But yeah, obviously, I am also curious to see how this build-up, which is different from the previous years, will translate on race day.
Okay.
That's a question mark.
Very interesting. I'd love to hear you share a little bit more, because Rod Farvard was just in here and we talked about this also. Him coming in as the second fastest man ever, yourself coming in with 2 back-to-back podiums. For both of you, it would be easy to take what's worked the last couple of years and copy and paste it to this year, but it sounds like you've taken maybe a different approach in your preparation. So maybe you could share a little bit about how the build up towards the 2025 Western States is different from the previous podium preparations.
Well, for sure, because I didn't do the marathon, so I have been doing just much more this trail and elevation, in distance and elevation throughout the year, from the beginning of the year. So that overall gives me a much different background when I am going to be at the start line compared to the previous years, where I might had 2.5 months of mostly road running on flat with speed, which is great. But on the other hand, I finished last year trying to run at the 100K World Championship. I had to pull out due to a hip injury, but I still had a good marathon distance. And I think even though I finished with an injury, that actually made me finishing my last year with some speed in my legs and build the whole rest of this build up with that speed. It makes me I think the speed is still there, maybe a little bit of percentage off, but it's still there. But on the other hand, I am just much more I was just running on trails which are mostly Western States specific since the beginning of the year.
So just longer specificity. Very interesting. So looking at the women's race, obviously it's as deep and as competitive as ever. In fact, we have statistics to back that up, which we already shared with our audience in today's show. We don't have the past 2 champions, Courtney and Katie, who both always seemingly race aggressively. which makes me feel like there's a vacuum where somebody is probably going to take the initiative in the field in the same way. I'd love to have you just share, as you think about the dynamic in the women's pack, how do you think it might play out? Do you feel like you might be somebody who takes that initiative as the 4th fastest woman in Western States history, and with the experience that you have here?
So the 4th fastest woman in history, that was the same that we could say in 2023. So
right.
people in Hong Kong are laughing at me when,
right.
That's always the case,
sure.
kind of.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's super interesting. Like, one thing we can say for sure that who will win, it will be first time winner.
Yep.
In Buffalo Stampede, like, I just for me it works as a blueprint because I had not much pressure and I could just race without any fear, and it worked out. So that is something that is great if I am capable to carry on. But seeing the women field, I think it will be quite interesting to see how it plays off. Like, it's a really deep field and with different strengths in different women. But, you know, it's still a 100-mile race with a lot of, like, things that you need to handle during the day. So, yeah, let's see who will handle it the best.
All right. Well, not to put you on the spot, but I have heard rumors that you're targeting very fast time.
Oh.
And speaking of racing without fear, you don't need to reveal your strategy or your personal goals. If you'd like to, obviously I would love to talk about it. But what I think is more interesting is, like, it seems to me, and especially looking at the evidence of the last couple of years of Courtney and Katie and how races are evolving globally right now, that you do have to race without fear in order to win a race like Western States. So if you'd like to share anything about your goals or in general about how releasing fear in the way that you did at Buffalo Stampede might be reflected in the strategy that you take at Western States.
Yeah, I think it's a learning process for sure. But yeah, I do realize that you need to be intentional. So, and if you have doubts and fears, that will hold you back eventually. So that's kind of something that, it's a risk taking anyway. It's a risk taking for anyone. But on the other hand, I do think that to be the best in a race, for sure, you can't do that with fear. Like, it doesn't happen by chance. Like, and so it's in that sense, like, for me, like, I'm interested in that personally, but I think one thing is the physical preparation, so it's the training block that you put in. And on the other hand, also the mental preparation that you put in and the mental state that you are at the starting line. And some women can be faster, but with not the right mental state, it doesn't necessarily translate into the best performance. So, I mean, it's all a question mark, and so I'm also curious to see how it goes. But yeah, that's my mindset.
Yeah. Very, very interesting. A couple more things I'd love to ask you about before we wind down. You just, I think, got a master's in philosophy from the University of Hong Kong. Is that right? Doctor of philosophy. I'd love for you to just share a little bit about that. I think that's interesting. Where does your interest in philosophy come from?
It's not, so it's, that's confusing. So it's a doctor in philosophy, which is the PhD.
Okay.
But I'm an art historian, so it's PhD in art history.
Okay.
And currently I'm doing a postdoc. People like to ask about that. To be honest, probably I came into the running scene too late, so my mind is used to be intellectually challenged.
Yeah.
So I think I work the best when I am physically and intellectually challenged. So just now coming from Flagstaff in my easy days, I was struggling to finishing an article with a deadline, but that was like, it's a good switch off from something that is totally unrelated to running.
Yeah.
But yeah, my research is 17th century Chinese natural history images that were sent to Europe. So
very interesting. Well, thank you for sharing. And I'm sure there's many people who will resonate with that, of like having the intellectual stimulation in addition to the athletic, pursuits that you have is a great way to stay balanced, and hopefully a great way to ensure that, you don't get maybe too overwhelmed by the gravity of the stage at which you're competing on, because you have other interests too. Before I let you go, I'd love to just ask you about Chris Hollis, who's a mutual friend of ours, and he's been part of your team now for, I think, both of your podium finishes the last couple of years.
So last year.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So maybe just share a little bit about Chris, what he's meant to your team, because I think he's going to be on the team this year too.
He is. Yeah. He's the best.
Yeah.
He's the best. Yeah. So he was my pacer last year from Forest Hill to Rocky Chucky. We had a dramatic time. As I told you before, I was already in a low patch. And then when we left Forest Hill, right after I puked, and then after he fell, and then we were, in some way we ended up arriving to Rocky Chucky.
So this is during your 40K low spot, we should say, yes.
Yeah. And then, and then at UTMB, I finished crying because it went so bad. And he was there at the finish line, and it was just, it was so nice that he was there. And I think that 25 kilometer last year, like, just made this bond, really nice. And so I think it was September, end of September, early October, I said, I'm going for it again. And he said, okay, I'm with you. And he has been sending me his splits and preparation, and everything is like, he's so cool. Yeah. He's amazing. Such a great person. So I'm really grateful for the whole team I have for the race. But yeah, definitely, like, it's even though I am the one who is running from A to B, it's with them. The whole experience is just so different, and Chris is a big part of that. Yeah.
So just for the viewers and listeners, Chris Hollis works at HOKA too, and he's a big and important part of the team on the ground that puts Western states together for the brand. He calls you the Hungarian Hammer. I think he's calling himself now the Hungarian Helper. So two good nicknames.
He made some funny stickers. I think he's arriving on Wednesday.
Yeah. Well, Eszter, just congratulations on the last 2 years, and appreciate you coming in studio. And I'm personally very excited to see you race here for a third time.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.